Our third installment of this webinar series, The Unexpected Outcomes of Great ServiceNow SPM Reporting and How to Achieve Them. Just to recap what we've covered throughout the week, we started on Tuesday and focused specifically on project and more specifically on project status reporting and some of the outcomes there and how we can drive towards them within the VividCharts product. Yesterday, we covered portfolio and program level reporting and some of the outcomes we're driving towards there and how we can start to automate some of those assets that pull the lens out a little bit for the steering committee to discuss a lot of different data points in ServiceNow at the portfolio and program level. Today, we're going to be focused on the demand workflows within the platform, the personas involved, and some of the pain points that we hear around this process, and again, how we can solve for them within the VividCharts product. So just for those of us that aren't familiar, VividCharts is a ServiceNow Elite technology partner offering in-platform reporting apps for key functional areas, including SPM, ITSM, and MSP apps. The data engagement platform is largely pointed at scenarios where you as a customer are pulling data out of the platform for manual reporting workflows. So we focus heavily on when are you going to Excel, when are you going to PowerPoint. So we're going to review a little bit of that through the demand lens today. Some of the key features and benefits you're going to see in the product today, how we can leverage this tool set, not just to produce pretty reports and automated reports, but produce reports that cover an end-to-end workflow and help users adopt the platform and enhance their user experience within the ServiceNow platform. You're going to see parts of our slide editor UI. You're going to see a number of charts from our chart library that's continuing to grow as we expand into more process areas and go deeper into areas like demand, project, portfolio, and program. We're going to showcase how our sharing capabilities open up the data to new audiences, stakeholders in the business. And then everything you're going to see today was built by myself, a very, very non-technical user. So that'll give a picture of how quick implementation can truly be. So again, thanks everyone for joining this third and final installment of our SPM webinar series. With that, let's get into today's outcomes focused around demand. Number one, manage demand request work intake seamlessly in ServiceNow. Number two, easily review volume and validity of all demand requests. And number three, facilitate demand execution workflow with transparent, accessible reporting. To start out, just like we did in the previous two installments, we're going to start with the people. However, with demand, we start to see a slightly different persona involved in this process. On the left and right-hand side, we still see portfolio managers and the executive team and functional leadership as very key parts to this process who have to communicate what's coming in the demand workflow if you're the portfolio manager. And if you're on the executive team, how do you start to vet those and decide what is the top priority to fund next? So consistency in those two personas. However, the middle persona, we start to see change a little bit, where we're not dealing with a formal project yet. However, in your organization, you might have demand managers or just general business analysts whose job it is to take the demands and start to shape them up, understand what's the full financial range that would have to be dedicated to the demand to fully deliver on the expected benefit. How do we get as much data around resourcing for a given demand so that when we're making a decision to fund something, we know we've factored in all of the scoping factors that it's going to take to deliver on the demand for the organization. So very similar pain points across the personas, but slightly different role who's actually in the field, in the trenches, doing the data entry and the tough work there. Once again, I'm going to pull up the project communication continuum. However, through the demand lens, the terminology is slightly different, but the concept is very much the same, and the pain points are very much the same in the field. that demand manager role, that business analyst persona, sits on the left-hand side of the continuum here, where they're out in the field gathering the data that provides a full picture of what it's going to take to deliver on a demand. And we find a lot of times that work is happening and hopefully making it into ServiceNow at the record level, at the related list level, but it's often presented in an Excel sheet, in a PowerPoint slide deck to the executive decision makers, the portfolio owners who sit on the right side of the continuum. So conceptually, a lot of the same pain points happen in this part of the process. So when we think about how do we streamline this and create the outcomes that we're talking about today, it's provide the easy button output for those portfolio owners and executive decision makers. So all the demand manager or the BA has to do is input the data into the system, feed it good quality data, automate the output, and you start to alleviate a lot of the pain points that you hear, and you just create a lot more visibility into the demand pipeline and a lot quicker decision making along the way. Now let's take a look into each of our outcomes more specifically. Outcome number one, manage demand request work intake seamlessly in ServiceNow. What we find in the current state, we touched on in the previous slide, there's a lot of demand requests entering ServiceNow on a consistent basis. However, it gets difficult once the data is in ServiceNow to start to aggregate it up and present it to the personas who are actually making the decisions on what gets funded. So a lot of difficulty in translating that data, aggregating it in the right way so that decisions can be made. It's also difficult to identify how demands fit into ongoing project work with a meaningful summary view. So one of the things you're going to see today is the ability to summarize a single demand in a meaningful way. But in yesterday's installment, we saw at the portfolio and program level other ways to look at the data, where we're looking at a full list view, counters, health indicators on both project and demand data, but during a steering committee meeting for a single portfolio. So when we get into the product, some of the tooling that you're going to see in our big considerations here around a solution are how do we provide demand intake views that aggregate the demand data in a single view that's clear, concise, easy to digest, and easy to make decisions off of. Core to everything that VividCharts does in platform reporting. So again, create the incentive for the BA, the demand manager, the project manager to just keep the data fresh and high quality in the system because the reporting output is easy and automated. And finally, dynamic roadmap with live data to plan against demand execution. You saw some of our road mapping charts yesterday. Those can easily be applied at the demand level as well. So a lot of capability around road mapping. And when we start to string all of this together, we're really trying to deliver more efficient planning around demand execution, which means quicker delivery, right? And easily seeing how demand requests stack up against ongoing project work. Present a view that puts both in a slide deck side by side with real-time, high-quality data so that you can weigh that in real time. Let's move to our second outcome here. Easily review volume and validity of all demand requests. So demand requests are submitted, and populating all the data oftentimes feels slow and feels a little bit invisible. Those demand managers, those business analysts are populating data, right? Sometimes they're populating in a PowerPoint slide or Excel, and then they get the data into ServiceNow. So even if it's visible, it can be slow. It can be fragmented. So how do we create that incentive to, one, give a nice incentive to just input the data into ServiceNow, but also provide the visibility so functional managers have updates along the way and can track it more effectively. Right now what we hear is functional managers often have to view multiple report formats. So depending on which BA, which demand manager is working on the report out for you, it could look a little bit different if it's being done manually. right? Sometimes you might get just a view of the ServiceNow record as a functional manager. Other times you get that PowerPoint output or an Excel briefing, right? A lot of variance in the format depending on who's putting it together. So from a tooling perspective, what is top of mind to deliver on this outcome? Report templates that, again, live in ServiceNow, that are editable and contain most of the important metrics for functional managers to make decisions. Again, we're going to go into the editor. You'll see a standard template that we offer, but you'll also see demonstrated the ability to iterate on that. So if you mature your demand process, start adding more data points to factor into decision-making, you can iterate the template along with the process. And all of this is in the spirit of providing functional managers the ability to plan for work that has been prioritized and make decisions on what gets prioritized. Providing all stakeholders access to current state demand volume and execution process. We're going to show a view for that. At the top of the list always is ServiceNow remaining the source of truth for all reporting needs. Create the incentive that keeps high quality data coming into the system. Outcome number 3 for today is facilitate demand execution workflow with transparent, accessible reporting. Demand reporting can feel separate from other PMO work, creating a disconnect in prioritization discussions. And sometimes it's hard to access ServiceNow demand data for users who aren't working in the platform on a daily basis. So from a tooling perspective, provide a reporting platform that aggregates the live data for a single demand, but can also package it up at the portfolio level, and a clear summary view of the demand work being prioritized. When we deliver this, we see the benefits of a more efficient demand execution workflow, transparent and easy to understand demand progress reporting that's always live for stakeholders. And you get better communication with stakeholders because they have the access, but they're also getting communicated up to in the same clear, concise, consistent format. Those are our 3 outcomes. We're going to jump out of the slide deck now and into the product to talk through the delivery side of these. So let me get my screen flipped over here. And we've seen this throughout the week. We're back in the VividCharts editor here, but we're seeing both an aesthetic that looks a little bit different from what we've seen on the previous sessions. And we're also seeing some variance in the data and visuals that we're seeing. So aesthetically, we're looking at a slightly different color palette, still VividCharts branded. So we've got the logo here at the top. And as you saw earlier in the week, everything we're seeing here is a drag and drop element that, whether it's a chart, we can fully modify this as if we're in PowerPoint. So a lot of flexibility on the look and feel, but also a lot of flexibility on where we're pulling the data. So if I just pop open the data menu here, you can see we're pulling from the demand table specifically for this chart, and we're looking at the description field. So I could just as easily modify that to a different field on the demand record. You're also seeing some of our additional chart types being applied that we've added to the library specifically for use with demand. One of those is up here with this chevron style chart type. That's just going to show for a demand how it's flowing through the process from draft to submitted to screening, etc. We're also going to see a view later that applies this same visual format here, but applies it to all of your demand data. So if you're a specific stakeholder, you can see all of the demands that are in draft, all that have been submitted, all that are in screening. So you can see the entire pipeline end to end. What we're also seeing here is some of the related data points we get asked to include on a demand one-pager update. So the demand task. So if we open up the data cog here, you can see we're pulling from the demand task table, and we're pulling the short description due date assigned to, but we could just as easily pull from any other fields on the demand record here. Now, just like with project, portfolio, and program, once we've standardized the format and the data, we then need to produce it at scale and serve it up in a way that it can actually functionally be used in a discussion in a business meeting. So again, we're going to click over to our summaries capability here, which you've seen throughout the week. However, with this, we're pointing at the demand process area. We can see we have a few different templates loaded into the system. This is the one we were just looking at. So created this for the webinar and loaded it up here. You can see we're looking at a card style that does not link to the record. You could also build a summary page that is for users who do have access to the record view. And so you can give them an easy button to get to the record as well. And then since we have a significant amount of data here and it's rather incomplete, I have this filter down to the sales portfolio just to look at these because we have great data for them. So let's open up a single demand. Now we're seeing the corporate credit card program demand with the same set of visuals and data points that we were looking at in the editor, but specific to this demand record. The tasks remaining, the resource plans that have been built for this specific demand. So we can, again, present this directly out of VividCharts, full screen mode, zoomed out mode. We can, if we need to, download this to PDF or PowerPoint to distribute. We can also share this view with individual users, groups, or roles, or with all the users who can authenticate into the system. So don't need a fulfiller role to see this. So we can do that with an individual demand, but just like with the other process areas, we have the ability to, let's just say we want to select all. We're having the sales portfolio steer code today, so we'll call this steer code 223. And we have the option to open those 4 demands in the viewer together or to create a view from the set where we go back into the editor and can combine other slides, other chart types into the update. So what we've covered so far is the ability to standardize this single page format to summarize a demand record and the associated data points. We've covered the ability to produce each demand record in this standardized format at scale, leveraging our summaries capability. We've demonstrated we can bundle these together to be used for specific meeting types that are happening on a weekly basis. But what we can also do from a VividCharts standpoint and a demand standpoint is pull the lens out a little bit further. So with that, I'm going to click over to our next tab here. And this actually starts to provide a little bit more nuance on the size of organizations that we work with. We have some organizations who have much larger portfolios of projects and programs and demands, and much smaller. So we actually see some steering committee meetings being run out of VividCharts in a view like this, where right now we're looking at all of the demands in the system. We can see the chevron chart that I called out earlier being applied to all of the data in the system. But within this view, we can filter down very easily to a specific portfolio. So we do see, the request to run meetings off of more concise interfaces like this. So really good example from a demand perspective. And we can string together views like this with other process areas as well. So we can toggle over to our next slide, which is showing us all of the projects in the system. But again, we can filter down to that same portfolio, click run, and we're seeing only the things relevant for that. Just like with our other demand views, we can, download this to PDF or PowerPoint. We can share a view like this just as easily or present it directly out of the platform. Something else to call out, if you're publishing a view like this out via self-service, right? You have the filter set up. You can turn on and off clickability for any of these charts. So if you have non-fulfillers who are coming to a view like this, you can publish a good amount of information out in a list chart and prevent them from getting an ACL error message because they don't have the right access to go to the data. We are wrapping up the completion of what we actually had in the past, and we're revamping what we call the Vivid Hub. So the Vivid Hub is a portal that you can create and register a login for, and it'll take you to an interface that's going to look very similar to this, where we've built and served up a few different examples of the process areas we've discussed this week: project, portfolio, program, and demand. We're going to be also adding ITSM examples here, where you as a user who just creates a login, you can go to many of the examples that we've looked at throughout the week. So you can come and see, not just on screen share, but in the browser yourself, what the experience looks like, feels like, what it feels like to present out of VividCharts. So we'll be sending out a communication on when registration opens up for this, but just wanted to give a little bit of a teaser because many of the views that are going to be in here are views that we actually used in this webinar series. So really great tool to explore a little bit further on your own, demo to other folks internally who you feel like would be interested in the concepts we've been talking about this week. And to wrap the session up for today, just going to point back again to the VividCharts application roadmap here. This completes the overview of the SPM suite that we've discussed. Mentioned on each presentation this week that we have a lot of optimization and enhancement planned for the SPM apps. We have some chart library additions and enhancements. The Gantt specifically is getting a lot of enhancements in the upcoming releases. And then you can also see what we have planned in the ITSM side of the house. So change is out, major incident and problem are coming out soon, and a lot of enhancements across the whole suite coming throughout the year. If you're a VividCharts customer, I see quite a few of you on here. Obviously, get in touch with the customer success team to dig more specific into implementation of any of these app areas. If you're not a VividCharts customer, book a live demo. We can turn any of the views you saw throughout the week into branded versions for your organization. So happy to do that. If you have questions, which we got quite a few in the sessions yesterday and Tuesday about applying the functionality you saw, but to the resource module as well, for example, please book a feedback session with us. We're happy to dig into those scenarios more specifically with you. And then, we have a number of different upcoming events that we're also going to be promoting. Just a teaser, we have at the end of February coming up a webinar that is, again, SPM specific. It's going to be with a partnership we established in the fall with the SPM practice at Third Era. We partner with them more broadly than that, but this webinar is going to be with that SPM team. So you should see that coming out here soon. Going to be a great session detailing how we're partnering with Third Era to bring the best of both orgs to the market. So again, just want to voice our appreciation for everybody who took the time out of the week to attend today's session, but a lot of folks showed up for all three. So we really appreciate it. We love working with each and every one of you. Just want to say thanks again.